The first two appointments I had with my oncologist were what he called chemo education. He wanted to give me an entire overview of what to expect from my treatment plan and any of the side effects that I might get. Because this is a lot of information and it's a really emotional time, he recommended that I bring someone with me to help me digest the information, ask questions that I might have forgotten to, and to help me recall the information when I got home and I was away from the office again. The first one of these appointments was about the treatment plan. I would be doing what is known as the keynote 522 regimen. This is considered the gold standard for triple-negative breast cancer. The key in the keynote stands for Keytruda, which is the immunotherapy that I'd be getting. So this is 4 different types of chemo plus immunotherapy. So for the first 12 weeks, I would get 2 chemo medications, carboplatin and paclitaxel. I'd get those every week for 12 weeks, and then every 3rd week, I would get the immunotherapy along with it. And then for the second round, I would get 2 different chemo drugs, doxorubicin and cyclophosphamide. I would get those every 3rd week for 12 weeks because they're stronger medications, and then I would continue to get immunotherapy every 3rd week. I also learned a bit about how chemo works, which I never really thought about before. I knew that chemo was pretty much poison for your body, but what it's actually doing is attacking any cells that are growing quickly in your body, which is why you often lose your hair with chemo, because anything on the outside of your body, your hair, your skin, your nails, all of that kind of stuff grows more quickly. So your body is creating those things more than the cells needed for your internal organs. And then the second appointment was talking about all the fun side effects you can get from chemo, what to expect from them, how to manage them. This booklet, you can see there's quite a lot in here talking about all the different side effects, things that you should be aware of, things to watch out for. So chemo side effects can range from anywhere from nausea, vomiting, bloody noses, fevers, and then they can also cause problems in the body with your thyroid, your adrenal glands. You can get diabetes. Not all of these things will happen to everyone, but you will have at least some of these things happen to you. Hopefully none of the big ones. And then there's also really, really scary things like chemo can cause you to get different types of cancer. So to cure one cancer, you might be giving yourself a second type of cancer, and it can cause death. And that is so scary. I developed an anxious breathing pattern from the time that I found out that I would need chemo. And this lasted for months, even well beyond the time when I wasn't afraid of chemo anymore. I would just take in these random sharp breaths, like just randomly out of nowhere. I wasn't even necessarily thinking about chemo or cancer at the time. So I truly understand why people can be so afraid of chemo that they seek alternative treatments, homeopathic medicine. Please don't do this. If your doctors say that you need chemo, you will die if you don't get chemo. These other medications will not help you. But the way I look at it is that, okay, over here I have chemo with all of these potential side effects that could happen and death. So this is potential death. And over here is not getting chemo and having certain death. So when I thought about it that way, the choice between potential death and certain death, I'm going to choose potential death every time, even if it's scary. You can't necessarily prevent any of these side effects, but you can prepare for them. Part of your treatment will be what they call pre-meds. They will start you likely on nausea medication and some steroids before you even start chemo to try and ward off some of the worst nausea and vomiting. And they'll also give you pre-meds before each session of chemo. One of the things that my doctor offered ahead of time was a referral to a fertility specialist in case I was wanting to have children later. They can either try to preserve your fertility by putting you into temporary menopause before chemo, or they can collect eggs and freeze your eggs. I wasn't interested in any of this, but it was really nice that they offered me this option. And one of the roles that your oncologist plays in this process is to help you manage the things that happen as they come up. So if you start to feel especially nauseous, or if you have some side effects that are really bothering you, you can tell your oncologist and they can prescribe other medications for you to take that will help manage the symptoms that you're getting. One other thing that my doctor did while I was getting these chemo education appointments was let me take a tour of the cancer center showed me the infusion room so I could see exactly where I'd be getting the chemo, meet the chemo nurses. They were both extremely nice. It was actually one of the few rooms in the hospital that actually had windows, which was amazing. And there's chairs, and the chairs are pretty comfortable. They lean back. They had little TVs attached to them, so you could watch TV if you wanted to. There would be a little table next to you. So if you were bringing books or games, you had somewhere to put them. There would be extra chairs so that if you were bringing your partner or a family member, they would have somewhere to sit. It was a really nice setup, and seeing it really helped ease a lot of my anxiety about chemo. But before I could get chemo, I had to get what's called a chemo port. You can see this right here. It's about the size of a quarter. It has 3 little dots so that the nurses know that they put the needle within the middle of those 3 dots. So instead of giving you chemo in your arm, which you can get accidental contamination of your skin that way, they will put the chemo right into one of your main veins. And getting the needle through the port is not painful at all. They give you lidocaine cream that you can put on about an hour before you come to your chemo session. You just put a little bit on top of it. You put a piece of plastic wrap on it. You can tape it down with medical tape and just leave it there. And by the time you get to your appointment and they go to put the needle in, you won't feel anything. It is literally nothing. So in order to get the port, obviously you need port surgery. The surgery itself wasn't that big of a deal. I didn't have to really do anything to prep for it, except not eat or drink anything after midnight the day before. So the next morning I went into the hospital, and I was taken back into a prep room. There were 2 nurses there. One of them actually had a port too. So she was showing it to me. She was telling me all about it, how she doesn't even feel it, how it's great. She was getting treated by the same oncologist, so she was talking about how great he was. This all made me feel really good. She also said that she was up and back to work the next day and everything was fine. And the other nurse was really sweet. I used to have really long, wavy red hair, and she told me that I looked like a Disney princess because of my hair. It just kind of hit home in that moment that I'm like, there's a 99% chance I'm gonna lose this hair. And it was just one of those things that made me laugh, and it was silly, and whatever, you can't do anything about it, so you have to laugh about it. And that was also the first time I got an IV through my hand, which I didn't even know was a thing. And I didn't even know she was doing it. Like, I was talking to the one nurse, and then the other nurse is kind of like feeling my arm, and I'm like, I don't know what she's doing, but I'm talking to the other one about my port, and then I just feel this pinch on my hand. I was like, what? Before all of this, I had to get my blood drawn a couple of times a year for my thyroid problem, and I never liked it. I always felt kind of lightheaded afterwards, but I'll tell you what, you will get so many blood draws and so many needles that it barely phases me now to get my blood drawn. I still have to get it drawn after all this time for so many tests after cancer, and it's like nothing now. I'm just like, all right, here's my arm, do that, barely anything. So that was a nice thing that came out of it. Anyway, they wheel my little bed into the operating room, and then I climb onto the table that they're gonna operate on, and I'm just laying back, I'm talking to everyone, and I'm starting to feel really tired because they put the anesthesia in. And then eventually they put a drape over my face, which is funny, because they were trying to create a sterile field to put in the port. And so I just have this like blue sheet over my face, and I'm getting tired, and I'm just like, okay, I'm going. And then I wake up, and it's a couple hours later. My port is in. I can't see it because it's covered in bandages, and I don't really feel anything because I still have all the anesthesia in my body. And it was amazing because when I woke up, the first thing I saw was a table in front of me and a sandwich on it. And I was like, this is fantastic. This hospital has such good UX. UX is user experience. I'm a user experience researcher, so I'm always talking about things in terms of good and bad UX. And this was such good UX to just wake up and there's a sandwich there. So after that, I go home, the anesthesia starts wearing off, and I start feeling the pain, but it's not too bad until I go to bed. I can't lay back in bed or get myself out of bed without excruciating pain. Thankfully, I don't live alone, and my husband was there, so I would have to call to him in the night to help me go to the bathroom. And even when he was like holding my back and very carefully pulling me up, it was so painful. And I was screaming, and Obviously that was upsetting to him, and I was just not prepared for that because everyone was saying how this surgery was easy and how I would be back to work within a day or two. So my advice for any type of procedure is to just expect the worst all the time. And you might not have the worst. For instance, I thought this procedure was going to be easy and it turned out to be awful. And I was so scared about getting my double mastectomy because I was worried about how painful that and long that recovery would be. And that surgery was like nothing compared to the port surgery, which is this tiny little line here and then another small one up here. That was all it was. And I'm not sure why it was so terrible. My theory is because I had large breasts and the weight of my breast might have been pulling down on it. I don't know. If you always expect the worst, then when it's not bad, you're like, hey, that was actually pretty terrific. And it's a good thing. And you always have to look for good things when you have cancer. There's not very many of them. So I would find the silver lining in just about any little thing that I could. So I scheduled my first chemotherapy less than a week after my port surgery. So I wasn't even completely healed yet, but I was like, hey, let's do this. Let's save my life. So more on my first chemotherapy session next.